Welcome to the Manders Mindset podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Welcome to Manders Mindset, where we explore the power of shifting your mindset to shift your life. I'm your host, Amanda Russo, and I am so excited for today's episode. And I am here with Clementine Moss, and she is the founder and drummer of Zepparella. And she has had a busy solo career as a singer and a songwriter. She's also an author, and we are going to delve down her journey today. So, who would you say Clementine is at the core?
Oh boy. I feel like I fought the core of Clementine for a real long time. But sometimes when I, in meditation, I'll kind of go back and just go to the, try to find that spark of me. And I always come up with this image of me as a 3-year-old. And I'm just a really, at the core, a very happy person who sees life in a happy way. And, there have been years where that was definitely clouded over, and I did do a lot of struggling in my life. But when I come back to that kind of intrinsic joy within myself, I feels like the truth of me.
Can you take us down memory lane a little bit? Tell us about your childhood, family dynamics a little bit, however deep you want to take that.
Yeah. So I grew up in Southern California, very middle class suburbia, and I am the oldest of 3. I have 2 sisters. There are 3 of us. I grew up with my sister Daphne, who's 3 years younger than me. And I was the 4 of us until I was 16, and my mom had my sister Jessica. We had a really lovely family dynamic. And actually now I think that my family is the number one thing in my life that I'm grateful for, because they're infinitely supportive. I realize as I've kind of come to be a spiritual counselor for people, and just having lived in the world as long as I have now, I see that when you have parents who put your life, your priorities first in their vision, you've kind of won the lottery, and even though there were struggles and difficulties and all of the stuff that we go through growing up, that core of knowing that there are people who believe in me and love me, I don't take that for granted, because I know how rare that is in this world to have that.
That's beautiful. I agree with you in terms of feeling like you won the lottery with them being supportive. My mom was and still is biggest support system I could have ever asked for. That's amazing though. I love that for you. So how was schooling for you?
Yeah, schooling. So I was the nerdy kid who loved school. I loved learning. My friend, who is a year older than me, when I was about 3 years old, taught me how to read, because we used to play school all the time. I actually learned to read very young because I was with somebody who was really excited about reading, and she taught me how. And it just kind of set me off into this ravenous desire for information. I think I was always that annoying teacher's pet kind of kid, because it really was just out of this complete enthusiasm for books and information. So, when I got to junior high school and high school socially, I had a hard time, but I just kept diving into the study. To me, that was kind of like my salvation. I'm a real big book person. So that was really the formative, when I think of my childhood, I think of my nose in a book all the time. Yeah.
So after high school, did you go to college?
I did. I went to Santa Cruz in Northern California, and I studied literature, American literature and creative writing. And I graduated in 3 years. When I went there, I really thought I was going to be on the track to become a professor and a writer. That was my goal. And then after a year or 2, I started really getting an itch to live a life. I identified as a writer, and I felt like I just hadn't lived. I'd been very isolated in my experience of the world. And I really knew that I wanted to move to New York City. And so I almost left college after 2 years, and I figured out that I had taken some tests when I was in high school that got me college credits. So I ended up being able to graduate a year early. So I moved to New York when I was 21 when I graduated. And I moved to New York City, and I really thought that I was going to be a writer, but I really didn't know how to do that other than to write. And more and more, I started feeling like I hadn't lived enough to write anything. I feel like I was kind of spinning my wheels, and I didn't have a lot of connection to the world of writing. So as I was kind of floundering around being a bartender, I was hanging out with a lot of musicians, and I started to kind of dabble in singing a little bit, fronting a band. And then one day we lost our drummer. I sat down at the drum kit, and my boyfriend of the time was there, and he said, "Hey, I'll show you a couple things." And I kind of started to play, and he said, "Actually, you have kind of a good sense of rhythm." And then I thought, well, maybe I'll just take a drum lesson. And I took a drum lesson, and that was it.
Now, had you ever taken a drum lesson before or play the drums before?
No. And I had, I'd played piano as a kid. And so I had a bit of a musical background, but it never was, once I left childhood, I didn't even think about really doing that. And I attribute it to, one, being kind of lost and kind of looking for something, and two, taking a lesson with this teacher. It was a private lesson, and he and I just hit it off so well. And I just got really excited about drums really fast. And, my boyfriend of the time who I was living with was a recording engineer. So I was in recording studios, and I was kind of starting to get the idea about how music is put together and what it looks like to be a musician. And then I was 27 years old, and I thought, well, I feel like I have to pick something. I actually went to a psychic at the time, and she said, you have a lot of different ways you can go, and you just have to devote yourself to one thing. Just pick one thing, for a couple of years. Just say, this is what I'm going to do, and see where it takes you. And so I thought, okay, that's good advice. I'm just going to do drums. Why not? It was very interesting to me. I had a kind of facility for it. And yeah, that just kind of went along with it. Yeah. And kind of, going back to the idea about having parents who are very supportive, I think that people who do have that kind of baseline feeling like it's okay to try things, it's okay to do things, that you have a support system even if you fail. I think, when I say I won the lottery, I think that those are the kind of things that I'm so grateful for, because I really did think, like, why not? What else do I have to do? I might as well. It's interesting. I might as well do it. I didn't have a lot of baggage around what I was supposed to do.
No, you said you went to a psychic around then, and they told you to just pick something.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of things you were trying to decipher between?
Well, it was definitely writing. I was definitely thinking about writing. I was thinking, well, maybe I'll go and get my master's degree in writing, and was looking at a college in Vermont that I was considering going to, just kind of floundering around, like really just not being able to figure out what is really lighting me up. What is really, I want to go where feel a passion for it. And in a way, I felt like going back to school was a little bit of a cop out, that there's something else maybe that was calling me. So I'm lucky I found it. Yeah.
And you felt comfortable to just try it. I love that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that helped you decide that this is the path at 27?
Honestly, I think I've always just been somebody who never really had much of a plan, as somebody who thought that they were going to be a writer, right? It's already a kind of, profession that isn't really, that's very questionable, right? Like you can be a writer in many different ways. And a lot of my heroes were people who lived outside of society, right? Lived outside of the norms of society, like beat writers and beat poets. So those were big influences in my life when I was 15, 16. So I always had the sense that life could be something other than what was prescribed by society, right? Like I didn't have the sense like, okay, now I have to graduate college and now I have to get married and now I have to have a family and now I have to get a career. Like I didn't have that. So I think that really, that kind of childlike approach to things, it was good. What kind of immaturity, I guess you could say, in a way, it was a benefit for that because I started thinking, well, if I was a musician, then I could travel. And I really do want to travel more. And I could have a job while I'm traveling, and I kind of had that thought before I even really took a drum lesson. Like I was thinking like, oh, musician, that sounds like a good job. That sounds like it would be kind of a fun job. I could be creative with a group of people. I could be in collaboration with people. Well, yeah, let's see if I can play an instrument. It's so goofy when I look back.
No, I love that. I love that. It almost seemed, well, even for myself, I won't speak for you, but like the societal pressure of like following the norms, like because you have such acceptance and support from your parents, it doesn't matter as much. Like
That's right.
this is what society says you do at X age. Like I'm 28 right now and not married. I don't have kids, but I live a life that not a lot of people would understand. But my mom is the biggest supporter, and I don't care about the like. I haven't checked the box. I haven't gotten married. I don't have kids. I'm very happy, and I've got a support system behind me.
I'm so happy to hear that for you. I think that, if we can have an influence somewhere, and I think that people your age these days, I think they have more of a sense of that, really following their heart more than following the norm. When I was at that age, I didn't have a computer. I didn't have the internet, right? So it was not like I could see like when I was in college, I didn't have the internet to see all of my options, to see, oh, this person's a writer and oh, I could do it that way. Or, oh, I could get a job like that. I didn't have those things. I kind of was flying by the seat of my pants. Like maybe I would meet somebody who would tell me some information, but if not, then I was just kind of like spinning around trying to figure stuff out. And fortunately or unfortunately for me, it was books like On the Road, which were really influencing me, which are people who decide that they want to live in the moment and they don't need to follow society's norms, right? And so from an early age, those were the kind of writers that I really identified with. And so I had a very romantic view of what a life like that would be. And I was okay with being very, very, very poor. I was really poor for a long time. And, things are okay for me now. But I feel like at some point in my early adulthood, I made a vow of poverty in some kind of way. And that was okay with me. Now, as, a grown up, a little more grown up, I look back and I think, God, there wasn't anything that I could have done that could have made a little money, like that I would have been interested in, but instead, like I was kind of anything that came to me, like I was offered a job in an investment bank once. And I remember just being like, oh no, like, and now I don't wish that I had done that, but just that, if that job was offered, maybe there would have been another job that maybe I could have like actually put some away for retirement or something, but that's hindsight and I'm happy with my life. So, I can't really say anything bad about it, but it did mean years of like really scraping by. But I'm doing a lot of dumb jobs that I really didn't care about, and I think, well, maybe I could have spent that time doing stuff that I would have liked to do better.
So, and after you did that first drum lesson, then how did you go from there? Did you get right into it?
Yeah, well, I started taking drum lessons and I had a little drum kit in the apartment and my boyfriend would kind of show me things and I was taking lessons and pretty quick, I thought when I got home from work, that was what I wanted to do. I just wanted to sit down at the drums. It made me happy. And after a bit of time, I started kind of jamming with him, right? Like we would just, he would play guitar, bass, and I would play drums. And so early on, I kind of got a sense of what it's like to play with another person, right? And then one day he said, I never would have thought that, because he had been playing his instruments since he was 5 or something. And he said, I never really thought when you started playing drums that maybe we would play together someday, but I think maybe we should, start a band. And so we kind of started a band, and, I'd been playing for maybe about a year and maybe like a little over a year when I started that band, and started playing some shows, and then that kind of fell apart, and I was looking for something else. I played in another band for a while, like with a singer-songwriter. And then I met this woman who was in a pop punk band, but who wanted to play really heavy music, heavy rock music. And we started playing together, and we formed a 3-piece heavy rock band. And that band I was in for 8 years and toured really extensively. Like one year in the year 2000, we played over 300 shows in the year. So that was a big experience. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So I know you're also into meditation and mindfulness. When did that come into your realm?
Yeah. Well, that happened early. When I was in college, I was reading books about meditation. And when I moved to New York, I would go to the...
Was that before you did the drum lesson? Sorry to interrupt. Just
Yeah.
okay.
So I was reading about it without really following through on it, just kind of reading about it and getting an idea about what meditation was and that kind of spirituality. And then when I moved to New York, I would go to the Zen Center, which is in the East Village. I would go there sometimes and meditate. And then when I was about 26 or so, right before I started playing drums, I went to my first 10-day Vipassana meditation. So I went and took a vow of silence for 10 days and meditated. And that really was a profound experience for me and kind of set me on my path of a regular meditation practice. So that happened around the same time that drums happened for me. It's funny because I had my rock and roll self, and then I had the meditation self, right? And they were these two parts of my personality. Now that it's all kind of one thing, which is what my book is about, is how spiritual practice, contemplative practice can be in a life that includes sitting behind a rock and roll drum kit. It doesn't matter what you do in your life for it to be helpful. So,
I love that. What do you remember what made you pick up a meditation book back in college? What sparked that interest?
I'm sure it was through literature. I loved J.D. Salinger, and there's a lot of philosophy, like spiritual philosophy in J.D. Salinger's books. And then reading Hermann Hesse, there was a lot of spirituality in those books. So it was through literature that I started to kind of feel like there was this bigger thing that I really wanted information about. And I don't know why I picked up this book, but it's called The 3 Pillars of Zen. I don't know how that book came to me, but that was really a big book for me. It was the first book where they really went into a Zen monastery and they interviewed people who were like in the experience, what it was like for them to be there living at the monastery, and what their meditation practice looked like and what their interaction was with the teachers. And I don't know, it was really, the thing with that stuff is it feels like something very familiar to me. When I was very little kid, I would have kind of these ecstatic experiences, where I felt a big part of something inexplicable. And so I think I've always been a little open to that. And then in my late teens, in college, doing LSD and kind of psychedelics, that also kind of opened up this idea of oneness and the way that it does. So I think I was always kind of a spiritual person. And then I just had these little guideposts, along the way that appeared when I needed them, I guess, which I think is the way it happens for most people.
No, you said psychedelics. You did psychedelics before you started meditating?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. When I was in college and then late teens, early 20s, I think I did a lot of psychedelics.
Do you think they helped your meditation practice at all?
Well, I guess it helped in some ways where I kind of knew that the ultimate goal was that opening up of the heart that we can experience sometimes in using plant medicine or and psychedelic experiences. That sense of everything vibrating as one thing, that feeling that maybe everything is the divine. I had those kind of ecstatic moments when I was doing those substances. So then when I learned a technique of meditation in the silent meditation retreat, and I had a big experience of kind of the falling away of Clem for even just a split second, I recognized it as that place that I had been when under those hallucinogenics. So I don't know if it helped it, but it definitely felt like it was showing me some of the same things. For me, meditation is much deeper than those experiences because, when we're in meditation, we're sitting with the uncomfortable, right? And we do that with plant medicine and psychedelics as well, where it can get kind of scary for a minute. But in meditation, you're sober, you're sitting there, and you have to sit when you really don't want to sit there, when things come up that you really don't want to look at or remember, when the body is in pain, when it's physically uncomfortable, when there's so many other things you'd rather be doing. Meditation means that you're sitting there and allowing yourself to be with those things. And I think that lesson is the greatest lesson we can take from meditation, is to be able to confront the uncomfortable. I think that when we look at society right now, we're all kind of trained from an early age to run as fast as we can from the uncomfortable, run from pain, run from, sadness, run from sorrow and push it all away. And I don't think that really serves us in our spiritual path and in our daily lives. So, I kind of went deep there for a minute, but I do think that meditation is a much bigger benefit in knowing the self than I think those substances will give you a big experience. But then I'm not quite sure that long-term understanding of who you are really comes through as much. Yeah.
Would you say that meditation has helped you with playing music?
Oh gosh, yes. And the music has helped me with meditation. Yeah. So when you sit in meditation and you're trying to focus your mind on one thing, say you're doing a meditation where you're watching your breath and your front attention is focused in on the breath, the more focused you can be on that one point in space, the more the background attention, that awareness of everything comes into focus, right? The more we busy the front mind attention, the more the back awareness of everything attention comes into focus. And playing a musical instrument is that way too. We sit and we're doing one thing over and over and over, trying to get it into our body, trying to make sure that we're playing it smoothly and easily and effortlessly. It's like muscle memory. We're focusing. And yet our background attention, especially playing drums, when I'm playing with 4 limbs, right? And so if I concentrate just on one of those pieces, it's not going to be as good as if I'm focusing on the whole, on all 4 moving together, right? So it's a good metaphor for the way that our mind works. If we're focusing too closely, then we can kind of get distracted. If we're not focusing enough, then our minds wander. So it's this play with attention, focus, and understand and awareness. And I think we find it in meditation. I think we find it in sports, when people are trying to do physical activity. And then we find it in playing music too. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really think I've learned a lot of lessons about attention and focus and peacefulness and breathing when I'm playing drums that I then can take to the meditation mat. And it's almost as if I'm looking for that same place, that place where your mind sits in the middle of everything, quiet, still part of yourself that never changes, while the hurricane of the mind is moving, while the physical body is screaming at you, while your emotions are rising and falling. There's that still center of yourself. And it's the same as sitting on the drum kit, where I'm sitting in that still center of myself while the guitar amp is screaming and there's a crowd applauding and there's, a lot of noise and lights, and I'm playing and trying to make sure that everything that I'm playing is in time and doing it well. If I'm in that still center of myself, everything feels effortless, right? Everything moves of its own accord. And it's easy. Yeah. And joyful. Yeah.
I'm curious, what has drumming taught you about breathing?
Well, with your breath, when you do breath, I know you do breath work. You see that when there's tension in the body, you can breathe into that tension and open it up. And so when I'm playing drums, so when I play shows, I'm playing for 2 hours. And that's a long set. There are some songs that are extremely exertive, and my muscles have to be, there's a tension in the muscles because I'm doing something that's difficult. I'm playing something. I think about the song, I play in a Led Zeppelin band, so I'm thinking about the song Rock and Roll, right? So it's 5 minutes and there are little stops in there, but, it's a quick song. And so my wrist can get very tense, right, as I'm playing, because I'm doing this thing and trying to make sure that it's in time. And that thought that maybe I'm going to lose the time is a tension. The thought that maybe it's a difficult song creates tension. The part of me that wants to do it and knows that I'm never going to do it as well as it was done originally is a tension. Like there's all this tension that's building up in me. And so my breath is crucial. If I notice myself in tension, I just try to breathe as much as I can into my belly, try to breathe into my wrists, try to breathe into my body, try to breathe all the way down my muscles. I almost see it as my breath is like a river kind of running through me. And in that, I start to be able to feel, then it's almost like if you start breathing almost in a circle, it's like your body now is moving freely. It's not a tight, like trying to do something. It's there's an ease that comes with the breath. Yeah, it's crucial to drumming. It's such a physical activity. It's like a sport, right? So, you think about how in sports, it's so important for people to just keep breathing. And even doing weights, I had a workout today, and it's like I noticed that, it's like I'll hold my breath while I'm doing something. That's not going to help me.
So many of us do, and we don't even realize it. But you becoming aware of it, that's the first step,
And I noticed it, sitting on, for 10 days, meditating for 11 hours a day and sitting there. And I noticed how deep my breathing became, in that first 10-day meditation retreat. You take a vow of silence, so you're not speaking to anybody. You're in a little silo of your own mind. And after a few days, I remember thinking, I don't think I've ever breathed like this before. I don't think I've ever breathed so easily and deeply all the time, because you just become this breathing machine, as you're sitting in meditation. And you notice when your body becomes tense, when emotions start rising or thought forms start rising, and it tenses up the body, and how your breath becomes shallow. I mean, you see it so clearly. Yeah, the breath is a great gift, for us to understand ourselves, really, really shows us what we're feeling when we can't access it.
How will you feel in post this 10-day silence meditation?
Oh, well, those 10-day retreats, they're pretty amazing. It's generally accepted that on the 6th day, everybody falls apart. Like the 6th day is the hardest. That's the day they always bake brownies for everybody, because they know they're going to have a hard time. I don't know what it is. A lot of emotion comes up by then. And by the seventh or eighth day, I always feel like my body is vibrating because I've just been so focused in this silence. So yeah, when I get picked up at the end of the 10 days, your mouth is running like a million miles a minute, right? Because you haven't been speaking and you've been having a lot of really profound thoughts. So it's like, you gotta go through that a little bit. But the high lasts quite a while. You really feel very in touch with who you are and who, I don't know, what everything is. It feels very beautiful. It's pretty profound. Although I met somebody once who she had convinced her partner to go with her. And, men and women are in two different areas, so they didn't really see each other until the end of the 10 days. And, she'd had all these big insights and she said, "How was it for you?" And he said, "I rewired our whole house. Like, we're going to have the best sound system." He's been like doing all of these calculations. And I understand that. I redecorated my whole apartment once. Like, my mind needed to go somewhere. And I had all of these color schemes and the way I wanted it to look. And it was just like, I spent a good couple hours on that. So yeah, your mind is a trickster, definitely.
It sounds like it was very transformative for you. Have you only done that once?
No, I've done 5 of them. I'd like to go back. It's hard to find 10 days, to block out in a life. And it's a difficult, I always tell people it's like the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also the most rewarding. Yeah.
That's so fascinating to me. Did you notice a difference over time? Like, so we've done 5, like the 5th one, was it different compared to like after your 3rd one?
Yeah, it really has to do with what you're going through in your life at the time, and kind of where you are. The first one was really big for me because I had one of those big kind of dropping away of the self moments in it. And it really set me on my path, I think, for spiritual practice. And then the second one was after I had gotten off the road for a year. And so that one, I remember it being very nuts and bolts of just trying to remember myself. And then, other ones, it's like a great reset in your life, I guess I would say.
I love that. Now, I want to transition a tad, but I'm just curious. Did you face any fear or imposter syndrome of stepping on stage and performing?
Well, I didn't feel that stepping on stage as much because for some reason, since I was a really little kid, I just felt really comfortable on stage. Any opportunity when I was a kid to be on stage, I would be on stage. And I don't know why that is. I don't feel like I'm, somebody who needs to be the center of attention, but for some reason, stage has always been a very comfortable place for me. It wasn't so much about being on stage. It was more that I had started playing drums so late, and everybody that I knew at that point had been playing for 15 years or 10 years or 15 years. And so for most of my career, I felt like an imposter because I felt like I didn't do the things that most people did. I mean, my nephew now is 16 years old and he's in jazz band and marching band and orchestra in school. He's a drummer and he's getting that education that a lot of musicians get in school. So I always felt a bit of an imposter in drumming. But in a way, it was also very freeing because I just kind of made my peace with, okay, I'm always going to be the worst musician on stage and any show that I'm at because I will have been playing less than anybody else on stage. So just do what you can. Do your best. And I didn't have to compete with anybody. I knew I'd lost. There was no competition. I always knew I would lose because they had been playing longer. So it was kind of free. I think maybe if I had learned when I was in high school, then I would have been in competition with all of the other musicians who were coming up at the same time. But I had no peers. So it was easy. Yeah. It relieved me of that feeling.
Now, did you feel relieved of that feeling like right away or over time?
Yeah, I think so. I think I did. I think I just felt like let me just do the best I can and hope that I don't embarrass everybody that they've actually asked me to be here, So I worked hard, to try to be okay.
So have you experienced any self-judgment from yourself on stage?
Well, not on stage. On stage, I feel pretty free and happy, but the feeling of not being good enough, not being worthy, and having a very negative internal voice in my life, that's been my big cross that I really had to bear for many years. And now I see it as kind of a way, even though it was so painful to have that, in a way it was a bit of a gift because it did bring me to spiritual practice and therapy and all of these places to try to figure out myself. Why did I have a negative voice? Why did I think that I was not intrinsically good? Why did I think that if people really knew me, they would see that I wasn't good or that I was bad? And I don't know where that voice came from, but it was pretty screaming in my head for a very long time. In fact, that was a big benefit of going to the meditation retreats. When you take a vow of silence after about 3 days, all you hear is your voice like a megaphone talking to you in your head. And that voice was very loud. And I was like, what the hell is that? Like, why? That's what I've been listening to. Why do I have to listen to that? And where does it come from? And how do I get rid of it? And that kind of set me on a seeking journey for many years to figure that out. Yeah, let go of that.
That's amazing, though, that you were able to bring that awareness and then let it go.
It took a while. It still rears its head sometimes. Yeah, it's mostly gone. Yeah.
But the silence, you think that helped?
Yeah, I think when we can see our thoughts, when we can really hear our thoughts, and then we can realize that we really can't control our thoughts, that they are like physiological processes in our bodies that rise up because of our DNA and because of our experience, and that it's really not about controlling thoughts. It's about seeing them and not reacting to them. And that was a big shift for me when for a long, long time, I thought that it was my job to control those things and get rid of them. And when I realized like, oh no, I don't have any control over those. They're just going to rise up and I'm just going to realize that they're telling me lies and they're doing that to try to keep me safe. But, I don't need to listen to them. Then things really shifted for me. Yeah. I think we hear a lot, oh, you got to control this is the way we control our mind. And I just don't think we can. I think that's a fallacy and it'll cause us a lot of pain trying.
I get what you mean. So I'd love if we could transition into your book that you wrote and you could tell us a little bit about, have you always planned on writing a book?
Yeah, I thought I was going to write a whole bunch of books. When I started playing music, I kind of stopped writing for a number of years. And then writing kind of started coming back in my life. I started to have a blog. And during the pandemic, I kind of looked at the blog and I thought, I think maybe this is a book. And I thought at the time, okay, I'll just find my favorite blog pieces and I'll put them together in a book. And then I was like, actually, no, you have to write a lot more and make it into a book, which I did. And the book, it's called From Bottom to Buddha and Back. And it's really about that. It's a memoir. It's about that process of finding drumming when I was older than most people do. And then it's also about what we've been talking about how meditation and drumming are connected and how I started to see the lessons I was learning on the drum throne as so similar to the lessons I was reading about in meditation books that I thought, there aren't a lot of books about, okay, so we sit for 10 minutes every morning and we meditate, but how does that affect our life? What happens in our life when we're in traffic and we see anger rising up in traffic, or we haven't slept enough, or we have to do something really difficult and there's all these obstacles in front of us. Like, how does meditation help in those situations? And I thought that I would write about being on the road and how I could see all of the mindfulness I did off of the road seeping into my road stories of having to drive all day and then get out of the car and unload and the equipment and set it up and sound check and find dinner and then play a show and then break everything down and go to the hotel and wake up early and drive the next day. It's just, on the road, it's an intense life. And how does meditation help me in that? And maybe that would help other people see how meditation could help them in their lives, no matter what they're doing.
That's beautiful. So you said you had planned on writing a lot of books, but now this is the only book you've written so far, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you see yourself writing more?
I do. There's two things that are kind of percolating in my head. So we'll see. I've been writing a lot of songs in the past few years. My output kind of shifted to songwriting. So I have a record coming out. I just put out a record. I have another one coming out at the end of May. So songwriting is really kind of, after the book was done, that's what kind of grabbed me to do. So that's where I've been focusing a lot of my energy, that and playing shows and working as a spiritual counselor.
That's amazing. Now, as a spiritual counselor, how did you get into that?
Yeah, I've been thinking for a long time. I get to be a musician. I love being a musician, but I wish that I could do something that was a little more tangibly assisting other people. And so I took a 2-year certification in contemplative psychotherapy, so like Buddhist psychotherapy. And at the end of that, it was suggested to me that I go to investigate this shamanic program in Berkeley, California. And so I went to a course. The Shamanic Journey was the first course that I did. And when I walked into the class, there were about 20 people in the class, and sat down and the drums came out. And suddenly all these light bulbs came on in my head. Like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I think maybe I'm supposed to be here. Like, the drum is a spiritual instrument for me. The drum kit is, and I'd never played, a frame drum, but when that came out and I understood it, all of the benefits of using that in meditation and journeying, yeah, I felt like maybe my life had been bringing me to this place. I started studying with the teacher there. The name of the school is The Sacred Stream, and the teacher's name is Isa Gucciardi. And she's developed a couple of wonderful modalities, and one of them is called depth hypnosis, which combines Buddhist psychotherapy and shamanic practices and Western psychology into a really beautiful healing modality. And so I am certified as a depth hypnosis practitioner. And then she also teaches a form of shamanic counseling using shamanic techniques in a therapeutic environment. And so I was certified as a shamanic counselor as well. And then I became a minister of the Sacred Stream, and I got plant medicine certification so I can help people understand their plant medicine experiences, and a couple of others wonderful healing modalities. And so I do that when I can to help people. Depth hypnosis is a really wonderful therapy for people with PTSD, anxiety disorders, and depression. So those are the kind of situations I work with.
That's beautiful. It all seems so synchronistic.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
It does. It does.
Strange. Yeah, I know. It's funny.
That's so beautiful, though.
Yeah, I know. I'm so grateful for drums. I feel like drums have given me so much in my life, I don't know. I love drumming.
That's great. Now, I'm curious. I tend to ask a lot of the guests this, if they have experienced at some point in their life. A lot of us have experienced multiples, but I'm curious if you've experienced your biggest aha moment where you shifted internally or things around you shifted, an aha moment.
Let's see. Boy, I feel like I've had many of them. I think it was when I realized that there was a part of me that was really happy and peaceful, and that I didn't need to do anything else. I didn't need to keep striving. And most of my life I was hell bent on the future, right? I always had things that I'm an Aries, right? So I'm always moving forward. I'm always going towards something, always feeling like there's something else. There's something necessary. There's something more I need to heal from or learn from or get better at or be a better person. And I feel like there was a moment, and I can't even tell you when it was, where I really just was here. And I felt like all of that fell away. And I remember saying to some of my friends, I feel like I've lost my ambition. And it's funny because when you say that to people, especially in America, where ambition is what we're all like, it's our forward movement, it's our energy, our ideal in a way. To say that is almost like a sacrilege. Like, wait a minute, you don't have anything you're working towards or anything. And it wasn't that I didn't have things that I was working on musically or goals or things that I'd like to see happen. It was more that I lost that kind of nebulous feeling of moving towards something, that I always had to be moving, and instead realized that I could just sit in appreciation and enthusiasm. And that now my forward movement was out of just gratitude and enthusiasm for what was present. I feel like I'm a different human being after I made that realization. I feel like I changed everything. I feel like I started to be able to say, I'm happy. And, even that feels hard for a lot of people to say. It feels like we shouldn't be allowed that or something, especially when we look in the world and there's so much suffering. And, it's like, oh, if you're happy, you don't say it, because how come you get to be happy? And there's so much suffering. And yet when I let all of that noise go and just be in the center of myself, in the center of this moment, like, I'm happy, I'm grateful. And yeah, there are things, finances are always a catastrophe, and, I don't have anything of value, and, all of that stuff. But like all of that, it's completely blows away in the wind of being present and happy. So I can't tell you when that moment was, but I remember coming home one day and being on the top of this hill and suddenly it just falling on me like, oh my gosh, I'm a completely different human. Like, I see the world and myself completely differently now. And it was through the work that I did, the shamanic work I did, the depth hypnosis work I did, the personal work I did, the years of meditation all brought me to that.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for the great questions. I really, really love talking to you.
Oh my gosh, of course. I loved talking with you too. Now, have you heard of a man named Jay Shetty?
Ah, yes. Who is that?
He's an author, former monk. He's got a podcast called On Purpose. I'm a big fan.
Okay.
It's okay if you're not, but he has a podcast and he ends his podcast with 2 segments, and I stole them and I incorporate them in my podcast. So I give him a little bit of credit. But the first segment is the many sides to us, and there's 5 questions and they need to be answered in 1 word each.
Okay.
What is 1 word someone who was meeting you for the first time would use to describe you as?
Smiley.
What is 1 word someone who knows you extremely well would use to describe you as?
Goofy.
What is 1 word you'd use to describe yourself?
Happy.
What is 1 word that if someone didn't like you or agree with your mindset would use to describe you as?
No, flaky.
What is one word you're trying to embody right now?
Gratitude.
Second segment is the final 5, and these can be answered in a sentence.
Okay.
What is the best advice you've heard or received?
To follow your enthusiasm.
Why is that the best advice?
Because our enthusiasm is it's connected to our life force, our creative force, our life energy. And I think that's connected to our purpose, our reason for being, and the thing that will bring us to our highest self, our happiest self. Yeah.
What is the worst advice you've heard or received?
Worst advice. That has to do something with money. That money is the be all and end all of life. That things and money are the purpose of life.
What is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
I think it's not that I don't value it, but maybe I have a different relationship with physical beauty.
If you could describe what you would want your legacy to be as if someone was reading it, what would you want it to say?
I would like to think that I inspired people to find what makes them happy.
Love that. If you could create one law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be? And I want to know why.
The law would be to, let's see, how would you put it? Gosh. I mean, I'm thinking of political laws, but I guess it doesn't have to be political law. It can just be a law, which would be to see everyone as a part of your family, to see everyone you meet as someone who you cared for the way that you would care for somebody in your own family, because I think we all are kind of family, to be empathetic and compassionate. I don't know how you would word that law. But yeah, something like that.
Thank you so much for speaking with me, Clem. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. And where is the best place for listeners to connect with you?
You can go to clemthegreat.com and every aspect of me is there.
I will link that in the show notes. And I do like to give it back to the guest. Any final words of wisdom you want to leave the listeners with?
No, thank you for listening to all of this. And I hope everyone has a great evening, day, wherever they are. They see the world with a little light.
Well, thank you so much, Clem.
Thank you, Amanda.
And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Manders Mindset. In case no one told you today, I'm proud of you. I'm rooting for you. And you got this. As always, if you enjoyed the show, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share it with anyone you think would benefit from this. And don't forget, you are only one mindset shift away from shifting your life. Thanks, guys. Until next time.